I'd like to thank Gemma for asking me to come and talk today. It's a real privilege to be talking to lots of people. Usually I talk one-on-one, so it's a bit of a scary event for me. But my idea is that if I talk to one person and fix that one person, that's better than talking to 100 people and just getting to be 1% better. So the way I practice is completely different to lots of other GPs. I'm registered as a GP. And I have to say that because the medical counsellor wants me to. It's really hard to describe what I do, I guess. My daughter Mandy says I am a witch doctor and that I do voodoo medicine. And I think she says that with pride, and sometimes she thinks I'm crazy as well, so it's a bit of a balance. So what I want to do is just go through and talk about my take on disease. When I was a GP, I used to be really good, I thought. People used to come in and see me, and they'd get a prescription for their eczema and another prescription for their inhaler and another prescription for their antidepressants. So it was quite easy to treat. I would just do a prescription and that was it. But then, by accident, someone sent me a supplement that helped my adrenal glands, which are like for stress. And I thought, shit, I don't need this. I'm not stressed. It's just expensive urine. Who needs that? But I thought, shit, it's free. I'll take it. So I started taking it and actually felt better. So I thought, maybe there's something in this. So I sort of started exploring stuff, supplements and herbal remedies and looking at nutrition, which we never got talked about in med school. And then I sort of found out that when I started doing things differently, someone would come in and see me for, say, asthma, and I'd treat them using supplements and herbs and stuff, and they'd come back and I'd say, oh, how's it going? And they'd say, oh, my asthma's a little bit better, but shit, my eczema's gone and my depression's gone as well. And is that supposed to happen? And I said, of course it is. And I was thinking to myself, the fuck, how did that happen, But then I realised that a lot of these diseases have common underlying problems. And, I now call myself an inflammologist, which is something I made up yesterday. But basically it's looking at what is the underlying drivers for disease. So if you look at all those things, they have the common underlying driver. And with any disease, it's a combination of genes and the environment. They say that gene loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. So you need to have a combination of both to get sick. So for some diseases, genes are very important, like Angelina Jolie having BRCA1 gene. And you don't need much of an environmental trigger for you to get breast cancer. Or if you've got someone with Down syndrome, you don't need much of an environmental trigger to trigger that. But like having a car accident, there's no gene part of that, but it's all environment. So every disease is a bit of a mixture of both. And so, the person coming with me with depression, eczema and asthma, they've got the underlying problem of inflammation as an environmental driver. And so if you know how to fix inflammation, you know how to fix all these diseases. And you can use the same approach to fix all these diseases. And a lot of diseases nowadays are inflammation-based. So people will come to me with diseases I've never even heard of, really weird, strange stuff. And I think, shit, what can I do? So I start off doing this sort of stuff and they come back and they're a lot better. And so it just sort of makes sense that if you get to the underlying problem, you're going to fix things a lot better. And people are going to be healthy. They're not going to be just, you're not masking over symptoms. And that's the big difference, I think. I think when I was in general practice, I used to give stuff and they used to not have indigestion anymore. But if I do this sort of stuff, then they actually come back and happy because they are actually feeling a lot better and having a lot more energy. So I want to just use depression as a way of showing you what I do with depression, because I think that in your age group, lots of people are depressed. Of course, the standard therapy uses antidepressants, it uses talk therapy, and uses exercise like John Curran was talking about. Talk therapy is really good if you have the type of depression where shit happens, like if your partner leaves you or if you lose your job, then talking about it is really, really good. But if you have the type of depression that is shit doesn't happen, but you just feel like shit anyway, and you get diagnosed with depression because you're feeling tired, you can't concentrate, you can't get out of bed, you can't get motivated, then I don't think talk therapy is that great. But that's my opinion, Other people might have different opinions. So I think when we want to look at treating disease, we need to cast a wider net and take advantage of the latest research. Like on average it takes 14 years for new research to come into fruition. So there's a long lag time, and what I'm trying to do is look at the latest research and use that now. And sure, sometimes that means that we don't quite on the button because it's just emerging stuff, but if it makes sense and we use it and it works, then we're going to keep on using it. There are some misfires, but we just got to try and just see what happens. Because I think if we do that, you do get much better results. When you're talking about depression and you're talking about inflammation, you're talking about energy levels. To me, energy and inflammation are linked. If you have lots of energy, you won't have much inflammation. If you have lots of inflammation, you have much energy. And this is the depressed person. Heaps of inflammation, no energy. You never see a depressed person with heaps of energy. So, you've got to look at what causes inflammation, and diet is the most important. You can't get away from, if you have a crap diet, you're always going to be depressed. Toxins affect chemical pathways in your body, and they stop you from making things like neurotransmitters, like serotonin, the feel-good chemical. Leaky gut, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it's where the gut lining is more porous than it should be, so it allows the leakage of crap to get through the lining to interact with the immune system to create inflammation. And that's really, really common. And stress hormone imbalance, because if you've got all those things, your bodies are going to be stressed and it's going to affect hormone levels. So we need to treat all those things. There's only two things that you need to know about diet. One is you're having too much sugar, you're not having enough protein. Forget about the rest, is what I think. But obviously I'm not a nutritionist. And Kate, my nutritionist, will tell you something different. But basically, if you look at sugar, the amount of sugar that we eat is just crazy. If you were born in 1820, you had about 2 kilos of sugar a year. Now you're having about 52 kilos a year. So you're having about a kilo of sugar per week. That's a shitload of sugar, and that's a shitload of inflammation. And if you keep on having sugar, you're always going to be inflamed, you're always going to be depressed. So we put people onto a low sugar diet, usually less than 5 grams to 100 grams. And if you did that, if you went to the supermarket and looked at food that had less than 5 grams per 100 grams, there'd only be probably 20% of the food left on the shelves. So, we have a blunted appreciation of sweetness. So the more sugar you have, the more sugar you need to have to get the same level of sweetness. So we need more protein too, because all the feel-good chemicals in our brain, like serotonin and dopamine, are proteins. And if you don't have enough protein in your diet, you're not going to be able to make protein-based chemicals like that. And we actually need a lot of protein. We need 1 gram of protein per kilogram body weight. So that's around about, or at least 20 grams of protein per meal. So if you have breakfast with cereal, you're going to miss out, because it's very hard to. It takes 10 or 20 wheat bits to get 20 grams of protein. You would need to have some other source of protein. And so we normally advocate protein shakes, but you can have 4 eggs or some sort of meat. Like a 120 gram of steak, which is about that big, is 20 grams of protein, and 150 grams of chicken is 20 grams of protein. So it's a lot more than we used to have, than we are used to having, but it's something that our grandparents used to have all the time. They used to have bacon and eggs for breakfast, and then go out and work, come back and have sausages for lunch, and then go out and work and have a decent dinner. But now we're sort of very carb-based and very sugar-based. And so if you don't have protein, you're not going to make serotonin, you're going to be depressed. If you don't have protein, you're going to be toxic, because you need protein to get rid of toxins. You need protein to maintain blood sugar levels. So all those things make it really important that you have adequate protein. So even if you did nothing today but had more protein in your diet, I'd be very happy. If you cut out sugar, I'd be even happier. There's also, to make feel-good chemicals, you need lots of B vitamins and zinc, and that really comes from having basic meat and veg. If you have those, you're pretty much covered. A lot of people who are depressed will be sensitive to different foods, and the only ones we're really worried about are gluten, which is wheat, and bread and pasta and that sort of stuff, and dairy. Some people, if they're unlucky, or if they're lucky, they can make morphine-like substances from gluten and dairy. So from gluten you can make something called gluteamorph in your gut, and from dairy you can make caseamorph. So it's based on having an enzyme in your gut that breaks down gluten and dairy properly. If you don't have that enzyme, it doesn't get broken down properly, and it combines with other proteins to make these morphine-like substances. So a lot of people get addicted to having bread or having milk, and they'll feel good when they have it, but then as it withdraws from their system, they get very irritable and down. So if you come to us, you'll be gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. Initially, anyway. So where does serotonin come from? Everyone knows about serotonin, right? Yeah. So, of course, serotonin comes from your brain. Or does it? It actually comes from your gut. 80% of your serotonin is made in your gut by the interaction of gut cells and gut bacteria. And what gut bacteria do depends on what you feed it. So it really, your diet is so important. Like if you have a poor diet, you'll have bad bacteria which will make crap stuff and they won't make serotonin. So what happens is that gut cells and gut bacteria make serotonin, goes into your bloodstream, goes to your brain, and it affects your brain, affecting appetite, the way you think, how you think, protecting your brain, and whether it makes you depressed or not. So that's why we really concentrate a lot on gut function if you're depressed. You can't really overestimate the effect of gut function on depression and brain function. They call the gut the second brain, that's why. When you're depressed, your body's under a lot of stress, and that affects stress hormones. And the most common symptoms of that are you feel really tired in the morning, it's really hard to get out of bed, but then at night when you try and go to sleep, you're wired but tired. You're just really awake, but you're tired and you can't sleep. And you wake up in the middle of the night. You'll crave sugar, you'll crave salt, because you can't maintain sugar levels, and if you crave salt, it's because you're losing lots of salt through your urine, and that drops your blood pressure, so you often will feel dizzy if you stand up. You'll be more affected by glare outside because there's not enough sugar going to your pupils, so they don't constrict properly. And you'll feel very tired. Your sex hormones will go out of whack because they're all downstream from your adrenals and thyroid, your stress hormones, and so they'll go out of balance, so it affects your libido, affects periods, and that sort of thing. So everything goes to crap, basically. When you're talking about toxins, there's three main groups: heavy metals, chemicals, and radiation. And we're exposed to more and more toxins in the environment. Probably the worst one that we're having every day is having water out of plastic water bottles with the xenoestrogens. But the biggest toxin, and the one that I really want to talk about today, because I think it can affect a lot of people and go undiagnosed, and if you've got this toxin, you can often be diagnosed with depression and be put on antidepressants, which I think is a real shame. It's just a waste of human potential. Is mould. Mould can cause all of these symptoms, and cause symptoms that look like depression. And if you look at that list, if you've got more than probably 8, then you've probably got mould affecting you, making your body very, very inflamed. I would see 4 or 5 new patients with mould every day as part of their presentation. Often they'll be gluten sensitive as well because it shares the same genes. So you get mould either because you get exposed to a lot of it and it just overwhelms you, you breathe it in, goes in your gut, makes lots of nerve toxins, or you're genetically susceptible and you're exposed to a normal amount of mould and it just makes you inflamed. So the most common, the most significant ones are talking and then forgetting what you're going to say mid-sentence, or going shopping in Te Awa and feeling really, really tired and wanting to go home. Because the mould is worse if you're exposed to a lot of electromagnetic radiation like Wi-Fi, and lots of shops have Wi-Fi, and that increases the amount of toxins that mould makes by about 400 to 800 times. So, and sometimes it's really hard to find the source of mould. I tell people they've got mould, they go home, they try and look for it, they can't find it. And they think this guy's bullshitting. And so I had a woman who had been off work for 18 months. They said, you've got mould. She went home and she was getting a little bit better. She went away, she got a lot better, came back and she got sick again. And they went up into the attic and there's heaps of mould from a water leak in the ceiling. And so they moved. Because you can't get better if you're still exposed to mould all the time. So if you think you've got mould from looking at that thing, you can do a test online which looks at your ability to see patterns on a computer. And it costs $15 US. But it's easy to do, and if you've got mould, then you're better off treating that rather than going on antidepressants. So in summary, the way that I practice is looking at the person as a whole rather than chopping up individual bits. And your body just really wants to heal itself. It struggles, but it really wants to heal itself. All you have to do is just push it in the right direction and it will get there. And that's what I'm just trying to do, just trying to give it the right nutrition, heal the gut, get rid of toxins, get your hormone levels right. And if you do that, then the body's just going to come right. And the good thing is that empowers people so that they know how to keep themselves well. If they have too much sugar and they get gut candida, they know the symptoms of that, so they know to cut back on sugar and they need to do something to get rid of it. And of course, don't go off your antidepressant. Because I get in trouble if you said that. Yeah, so that's it.